Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Ask Weldon Show, episode 171. This show today is going to be on procrastination, relationship advice, video games, mindfulness. I have a lot of topics for you today. My name is Weldon, and this is my show about peak performance in life and esport. I am a sports psychology trainer who does work with professional esport athletes, and this is my show where I take questions from you guys. You can ask them at anchor.fm/Weldon Green. It's a little podcasting app that actually allows you to call in and then saves your call in so that I can play it on the show. So that's the thing that I use because it's just so handy. Everybody can get it on their phone. You just lift your phone up and talk, and there it is. They do a lot of post-editing, I think, on the audio to make it sound good, so everybody sounds like they have a little bit of a radio voice when they call in. It's kind of nice. So yeah, that's how you can get your question on this show. If you're too nervous to talk or you don't have the app, check out Discord. I think there's links down below the video, and there's a specific channel for putting in your text questions. But you can also check out the show live, and you can just chat your questions to me, and we can deal with them in an audience-like manner, because before and after this recording, I'm on twitch.tv/mindgamesweldon, where I, do the before and after show. Why don't we dive into the first question, everybody? I don't have many updates for you today, or at least maybe I'll get into them later. I'd rather jump right into the show.
Hey Weldon, I am the worst procrastinator, and I cannot figure out a way to push through and almost punch through the procrastination that I have when it comes to something that I truly do want to go towards in my life, like going back to school or becoming a coach or anything. How do you get over that? Thanks.
All right, Don. Thank you for calling in, and good job bringing up procrastination again. So let's define what procrastination is first. I'm going to use a definition that I heard on air one time because I think it helps simplify it a lot, from Catherine Milkman, who actually is not a psychologist, but I think that she does a good job summing up this concept from a psychological angle, interestingly enough, although she's coming at it from the operations side. Procrastination is basically impulse control. Okay, so you have this thing that you know that you want to do that's better for you in the long term, but instead you do the thing that's instantly gratifying for you in the moment. Or that in you, and by instantly gratifying, it doesn't necessarily have to be a reward, right? It doesn't have to be necessarily that you are giving yourself a better experience, like playing a video game or taking drugs or going out to a party or something. It can also be avoiding like a negative emotional state or a tough state, like if you want to write that essay, but you know that you have to write, and that's going to bring self-critique and self-doubt, and you're going to have to put in effort, and so you stay in your current emotional state, which is relaxed, just watching YouTube videos and feeling slightly stressed out about life, because you have an essay due. So it doesn't necessarily have to be instantly gratifying like above where you are now. It can be instantly gratifying like as in you don't descend into a more stressful state, if that makes sense. So how do you get over procrastination? Well, there's two ways to do it, everybody. It's pretty fundamental. You either need to be more motivated about the thing that you're doing so that you're so motivated that the emotions cancel out any need for gratification, substituting, or you need to be able to set aside your emotions and not be driven by your emotions, but instead be driven by your values. Okay? So the motivation thing, well, you don't really have a choice about that. Your drive is your drive. So you can clarify, your motivation is your motivation. Your motivation is an emotional state. You get it and you have it. You don't necessarily choose it. But you can work on it and kind of stoke the fire, right? I like to put that analogy out there. If your motivation is your fire and you're not doing any stoking, well, it's no wonder you don't have a bonfire there. So one thing you can do is you can really clarify your drive, like the thing it is that is powering you and why you want to achieve your ambition. And you do that through things like journaling and through clarification of what you want to do. I have a value-driven goal exercise that I like to do with people. You can, I mean, there's infinite ways of doing it. Most of my work is working with people to clarify their drive so that they can amp up their motivation, essentially. But a good place to start is journaling about why it is you want to do the things that you want to do in your life, and trying to cut out the junk, like the extra stuff that you think you want to do, but really it's just a would be nice if thing. Okay, so make sure that you don't try to get yourself motivated about something that is irrelevant to you, because that'll never happen. All right, then the second thing, which is to be value-driven instead of emotional-driven. That's really simple. It's not easy at all to do, but it's really simple. You are driven by your emotional state, so you have an internal state. It's a certain emotion, like laziness or happiness or relaxation or whatever, and it's causing you to do, these internal states are causing you to do the thing you're doing. And you can only get motivated to do that essay if you, or actually do that essay if you have this motivation inside, right? This other emotion that surpasses the previous emotions. Well, this is not a very good state of life to be in, because then you can only do the things that you like amp yourself up for. So you want to be able to just, despite not feeling like you want to do it anyway. And for that, you need to be value driven. You need to be able to be aware of the emotions that are driving you. You need to be willingly accepting them. So kind of like leaning into that pressure and pain and frustration. Then you need to choose the action or the behavior or the physical manifestation of your desire in the world that you know will lead you to accomplish the thing you want to accomplish. And for that, you need to kind of have a map. You need to have a map of where it is that you're going. So what it is you ultimately want to do. Bring it back to like, okay, that's connected to this daily action. And the source of my desire for all of this is like what? Like what is my like source? So you have this like connected chain of values and desire and ambition that says, I should be doing this action today because I want this thing and I want this thing to happen in the future. And the driving force behind that is this like origin story or narrative, right? And then you can just do it. I want to write this essay, but I'm super lazy. I want to write this essay and I'm super lazy. I need to change that contraction from a but to an and. I mean, okay, so that's it, right? It's super simple. It's just not easy. And I don't really know how to answer it even better for you because I don't have any details necessarily about your particular hurdle, but the general answer is contained in my Mac program, which you can find at mindgames.gg/Mac. I usually advertise it at the end of the show, but it's literally about a program about procrastination. So I feel like maybe I should stick it with this question because that is legitimately the main thing that it helps with is procrastination. I get two kinds of responses from people who do the program. Either I stopped procrastinating about my esport and I train all the time now, or I stopped playing video games. Like it either makes people play video games more or less, depending on what their ambition and their desire is, right? So either way, it helps people with procrastination. They either stop caring about school and quit it so they can focus on video games, or they stop caring about video games and quit it so they can focus on school. But either way, they're not procrastinating anymore. Got it? All right. Anyway, you should use the code AskWeldon. I usually talk about this at the end of the show, but I'll just let you know now. That gives you the $5 discount. Okay, next question from Iris. Here we get into my first show on marriage counseling, although, yeah, I'm not sure that people here are married.
Hey, Weldon. Iris here. We recently finalized a competitive team that will try out and qualify for the pro circuit here. What's interesting, though, with some of the members is that our bot lane is a couple. So I'm wondering if a couple's relationship will affect the team dynamic in terms of probably practice and team play. And if so, what advice do you have for it? Thank you.
All right, thank you for calling in this question. I'm actually thinking of doing a more in-depth VOD based solely on this concept because the real answer is that relationships greatly affect your performance life in either a positive or negative way. Very little is it neutral. So negative is when you have a bad relationship and it's like basically it's not a bad relationship. Let me put it this way. There are relationships that are performance enhancing and there are relationships that are not performance enhancing. And you should choose the relationship based on the person and your goals in your life also, and how they fit together. Because if you choose somebody who is going to be a fantastic significant other or a fantastic spouse, but then you can't achieve your dream because it's not going to work out in that relationship, that's just a choice you have to make, right? You have to give it up, which is fine also. Turns out our dreams are not often wired up correctly in the first place. So usually you can accomplish them in a variety of different ways because it's often how we do things that's more important than what we do. And you can how you do things, you can do that with a lot of different stuff if you just modify your mindset. So anyway, what can Iris here expect will happen with the relationship couple? So one thing that you can expect is that he will have more mental resilience and more leadership on the team if he has a performance enhancing like kind of relationship where she gives him or he gives her identity and security about who they are outside of the game, independent of their success or failure. What that means is when they die in bot lane, that they won't necessarily tilt and then tank the rest of the team because their identity won't be tied up in, did I win my lane or not? Or did I get dove or not? Because they have this like secure foundation of who they are. And so they can quickly rebound from that bad thing that happened and jump back into trying to win the game. So they're liable to have more mental resilience and they'll be better off in a leadership role than other people on the team because of that self-identity and resilience. Okay, that's one positive side effect of a performance-enhancing relationship. If it's a negative relationship or a relationship that gives kind of a little bit of both, right? Then you can expect them to, I would say, like not train as effectively. So they train less because they're focused on their relationship, but then the training if they're using their relationship to fuel their passion and they're doing it appropriately, when they do train, they're actually training harder. So a simple example, when I started having kids, I had less time, but I became more effective at what I did because I had more motivation and drive. And so it's the same thing when you have a spouse to support and you know that what you're doing is taking away from their time or their relationship with you, you are more driven to achieve during that time. So you can expect them to be more focused in the training than your average person and to learn faster and get more out of it. Not necessarily learn faster because there can be learning speed is independent of this a little bit, but they should get better over time faster than learn faster in the moment necessarily because they're more driven on average every single day than somebody who's autodidactic and at a faster rate. If they're in a performance reducing relationship, then the opposite will be the case. They will actually suffer. Their identity will suffer because their spouse is kind of abusing their identity or not giving them any identity, or and trying to suck time away from them, or their actual training will suffer because despite the fact that they might be training less than their teammates, they are not actually training more intensely than their teammates, and so they're not doing it right, as it were. So those are the things you can expect: the positive side and the negative side of the same coin. And I would say usually it's safer to bet on people who can handle mature relationships than it is to bet on people who are not in them. A lot of people are like, oh no, we need to find somebody who's not in a relationship. More likely, if they're in a relationship, they're kind of more well put together. If they're in a functional relationship, they're more well put together than other people you could recruit. So it's better to kind of push them to achieve higher than it is to try to replace them with somebody who might be less sophisticated in their approach to life, if that makes sense. All right. That is my answer to your question. I hope it was helpful. Let's jump into the third question from Patrick.
Hi, Weldon. I was just wondering, should I be doing mindfulness meditation before I play some ranked games? And if so, what should I be focusing on during the meditation? Thank you.
All right. Sweet, simple, short, to the point. Yes, you can do mindfulness meditation before you can play ranked games. You don't need to, but you can. mindfulness meditation you should definitely do sometime during the day for training like your brain overall. If you want to do it before a ranked game, you should try to be upping your sport-specific mindfulness moments. Sport-specific mindfulness moments are when you are in the game and you're aware of more things than you have a right to be given your like current skill level, and you're able to focus on the correct thing at the correct time, like prioritize. So if you're going to do mindfulness before the game, it would be a good idea to try to focus on your priorities, your training priorities, or your goals, and try to visualize the game itself, the lane, the things that you want to accomplish in the game today. You can visualize yourself overcoming emotional barriers that are frustrating you. You can spend a lot of time with that imagery, okay, building up the scenes, visual imagery, sensory imagery such as taste, smell, tap, touch. You should be feeling yourself playing the keyboard and the mouse, not visualizing your avatar in the game, okay? That's a key important differentiation. I want you to visualize your body, not inside the League of Legends Rift like map, okay? And the other thing that you can do is you can do centering. So I would do mindfulness before a game with eyes open, and I would mainly do a centering exercise, like a 5-minute thing, not like a 20-minute thing. And I would try to set aside all other things in life. So you're about to play this game, right? Nothing else matters. You don't need to worry about your taxes that are due later. You don't need to worry about your essay that's due later. You don't need to worry about your girlfriend that you had a fight with, 3 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago, whatever, which is why you're playing the game now. You don't need to worry about dinner, which you're going to worry about fixing later. You don't need to worry about what you're going to get at the store or the money that you have to get it. Focus on the thing that you're doing only to reduce your injury rate. We know that in soccer research, in a research on female Swedish soccer team, that this kind of meditation before a training match reduced their injury rate drastically. And injuries in League of Legends are when you make a mistake in the game and your avatar gets injured. Okay? So you work to set aside life and focus exclusively your brain on like what you're doing right now. So any sort of stressors or anxiety that you would have towards like other actions are basically like running around in your mind, and they're going to pull you away from your focus on the game. You want to get into like 100% flow state focus on League for the game that you're playing. It will increase your joy with the game. It will also increase your learning in the game. And I don't mean that you should get rid of your anxiety, okay? That's not necessarily true. I think that you should get rid of your anxiety towards miscellaneous stuff that is irrelevant to the game. And I think you should work on increasing your anxiety towards where you visualize yourself being in the game after you play it. So like, what do you desire to accomplish in this game? Like what rank, what level, what achievement do you desire to accomplish like at the end of this week, right? And where are you now? And the difference between those two things, where you are now and what you wish to achieve in this particular game of League of Legends, that should be your anxiety. That should be your like driving kind of, it's a freeing anxiety. It's like, I want to go here through this training, and try to reduce the anxiety you have towards other miscellaneous things in your life that don't have anything to do with that. That's what I recommend for mindfulness before ranked. And good luck. Hope it was helpful. All right, guys, last question. Before we jump in, make sure to check out the Mac program, mindgames.gg/MAC. It supports everything that I do on this channel and on this show, and it is currently supporting the development of the new application, the new Mindfulness Acceptance Commitment app, which probably is not going to be called the Mac program actually anymore. We are getting close to launching, I think. So keep up the support. Thank you for all the support. It's actually paying off. Like, I've been able to afford development for the last 3 weeks in a row. So let's fly with it. If you've ever thought about owning the program, it's the best time ever to purchase it, because not only does the money go straight into developing the new program, but also you'll get grandfathered in with all of the other beta testers into this program, and you will never have to pay again to access it. Have it for life, and it still comes with a guarantee right over here. I think you can see down below. Yeah. It's funny because my eyes are looking like that way, but my hand, I was trying to look over here because my screen is the monitor. Anyway, you get, if you are unhappy or unsatisfied with the program in any way, you just PM me or email me and I refund it. That's what the 100% guarantee means. All right, last question. Oh, and use the code AskWeldon to get a $5 discount.
Hey, Weldon, it's Love again.
Sorry, everybody. That was a
question about league. It's about life. My girlfriend says I'm not verbally affectionate with her, but I do everything else I can and she will not let this go. It's not something I do naturally. She does not take that as an answer. What can I do? It's just not me. I don't want to change myself like that. I feel like it's fundamental to who I am. If you can answer that, it'd be a great help. Thanks, Weldon.
All right. Great question. I'm super excited to tackle it. Love, thanks for calling to the show so often. I think that your questions are really fantastic, and I think that everybody appreciates the emotion and the timbre that you put into your microphone. But that little tingly thing before the question was maybe a little bit overboard. I'm not sure what that was all about. Okay. It's real talk time, right? We have a pretty serious question here. My girlfriend wants me to be more verbally affectionate, and I don't want to because I don't think it's me. And I don't want to change. All right, so first of all, there's a couple different concepts in here. I'm answering this on the fly, so I want to kind of like structure this a little bit. One being, I'm going to type these out so I don't remember to talk about everything. One being and now I can't spell because I'm on air. Generalizations about self. What is it called when you make a solid line about what you will and won't do? Ideas and relationship. Okay, so first of all, generalizations about yourself. I am not this kind of person. I am not, this is not me, etc., etc. This is a very unhealthy way to look at who you are and what you can do. I don't think that anybody should classify them as a particular kind of person: introverted, extroverted, affectionate, non-affectionate, verbally affectionate, verbally unaffectionate. Everybody can learn these kinds of different things. And people are much more like water being poured into shapes than we like to admit. If you were in an extreme environment, Love, if you were in an extreme and rugged environment, you would shape yourself into the kind of person that would be needed to survive that. Okay, and that's just a fact. That's what humans have done throughout history. That's what our evolution has arranged for us to do. And if we want to escape that, not only so first of all, your statement about like this is not who I am is a little bit fallacious if you go to a fundamental state, because if you were in a war zone, if you were in a situation where you were in a conquering army, thousands of years ago and everybody else was doing it, if you were in a position where you were being tortured and forced to be a certain thing, most likely you would adapt to survive. You would be the person who is necessary to be in those moments, and that is who you would become. So it's a little bit fallacious on that side, and then also on the side where you're trying to surpass humanity's base instincts, or where we're trying to surpass this kind of like pre-programming we have to conform to the social dynamic, such as what the Buddha and Christ teaches. We would say that you should also be more like water. You shouldn't lock yourself into such a humane understanding of who you are and say like this is who I am, when in reality like you should see yourself more as limitless, and you should strive to be like the most compassionate and self-attained, I guess attained version of yourself as could possibly be. And every single challenge and spur along the way is like a barrier, an obstacle that you have to mold yourself to in order to overcome as a journey of self-discovery, right? So on both sides of the spectrum, both the extreme human raw end, I think that you shouldn't make generalizations about who you are and what you are, because they're basically false and a lie. And then on the other end of like massive like self-development and the aspiration for nirvana, let's say, like you should always see everything as a growth opportunity and a chance for you to mold yourself into a new person at all times, reforging yourself in the fire as a way of like continuous growth. And so again, generalizations about the self are kind of a lie. So the first thing I want to tackle in your statement is not whether you want to be more verbally affectionate, not whether, you know, relationship, whatever. The first thing I want to talk about is when you said, this is not me. There is nothing that could not possibly be you. Okay? You, I promise, are a human and would do the worst things that humans have done in history if you were within those situations and you weren't paying attention. And also, on the other hand, if you actually strive to be the greatest human, then there's nothing that you shouldn't aspire to be able to do and shouldn't aspire through to do in that way. So self-identity should come from, I think, more like in the form of drive or ambition, in terms of like what it is that you desire to achieve, and then you're molding yourself into the person who can achieve those things. And I don't mean achievement in terms of like ticking things off in terms of getting something. I mean achievement in terms of the value of how it is that you do something. So yeah, that's kind of like the first thing that stuck out at me. Okay, second idea, adamant lines in the sand. In relationships, these are very bad things to do. I don't think it's a very good idea to say like, I will do this or I won't do this. And I think that most of these we draw in the sand for other reasons. Like, I don't want to do this thing because I'm not getting anything from it. Or I don't want to do this thing because it will take effort and I don't think it'll pay off. Or I don't want to do this thing because I said I wasn't going to do it and now I can't go back on who I am. Or I don't want to do this thing because in previous relationships it was very comfortable for me to be this way and I just can't put in the effort. Or I don't want to do this because in my family, like this is how we do it and I have all this embedded like schema in my mind. We call them schema in psychology. They're basically embedded programmings of how it is that we see the world, that kind of like are just laid on top of your mind from your upbringing, usually from your parents. You discover a lot of these when you have your first kid. You're like, whoa, I have all these schema about parenting I didn't even know I had because I've never had a kid. So all of a sudden, for example, when my wife and I had our first kid, we had all these things come up. We literally never had a fight in 10 years. And then we had all these like minor disagreements about, oh, we should do it this way. We should do it this way. We had all these schema programmed into our mind, you know, like basically definitions of how it is we wanted, that we had to like dismantle, you know, and reform into our new version of what we saw about the world. So you have this schema of like, well, this is how it's done in my family, or this is how it's done in my relationships, or this is how it's done because this is how it's done. Why? Because this is how it was done. No other reason. Just, it was done then one time, and so now it's done that way. Like, schema are really stupid, okay? Do not tie yourself to these schema, to these adamant rules who are formed as rules only because they were randomly done in the past, or because you make a rule to kind of avoid an emotion or to seek an emotion, right? For emotional satisfaction, okay? So in that regard, I don't like people playing by the rules of the schema that they have programmed in their mind, that like they're allowing those things to control their life instead of to volitionally choose who they are at every moment and be completely free to reinvent themselves as necessary, independent of what their emotions are telling them to conform to. This is a real challenge. I want you to think of the schema that's telling you that you're not a verbally affectionate person as the same exact thing that would tell an abusive man to hit their spouse because that's the way that their dad did it to them and their dad did it to their mom. And they don't know any other way of doing it, and it's the most comfortable thing. And when the stressful fight is happening and like they have the emotions that their father had, and they don't have necessarily a way of coping with it that is like different in any way, they just follow their schema because that's the way that it was done. And so then that's what they do. So this is like what a schema is, right? And it's not necessarily true what you say. It's just that that's the way that you do it because that's the tool set you have. Okay, and finally, relationships. So I think that the real answer to your question, love, comes down to like what your ambitions and your goals are in this relationship. like you say, girlfriend, if you aspire for it to be just that, then you can build these kind of compromises, and you can say I'm not going to pay for that. I'm not going to pay the emotional reinvention tax, where I have to go and figure out what it is to do these kinds of things, learn the skill set, learn the emotional skill set involved with accomplishing that, and put that into myself and change myself into that kind of person, because the cost benefit is not there. Even though actually it's not that much cost. Just start listening to the Art of Charm podcast, and they have basically that podcast is all about this kind of stuff, where you reinventing yourself for relationship purposes, to be to use relationships to kind of purposefully rebuild parts of who you are in a way. So you just say that's not worth it for me for this relationship, and that'll be that. If it is worth it for this relationship, then if the thing that you want out of this relationship ultimately is worth the cost of you putting in the effort to learn this social and emotional skills necessary to do this, then you should do it. You should be like, oh, sweet, a challenge, a barrier, a chance for me to explore a new social and emotional skill set and learn how to create new habits in myself, and learn how to connect on a more fundamental level with somebody who speaks this particular language, a chance to learn a new love language that might benefit me later in life, or that might benefit me in this particular relationship, or that will help me take this relationship to where it wants to go, because this person will get this thing that they've always wanted. Just as an analogy, and I can't give any specifics, unfortunately, but after 10 years of marriage, my spouse found out something that kind of I'd always eventually wanted out of a relationship, that we still that I was just kind of putting off and waiting for it to happen, but it was still a fundamental desire or an itch or something that would have just been nice to have, that I'd always wanted out of a spouse, but I compromised when I married her, and was just well, maybe it will happen later, maybe it won't, but whatever, right? And she found out about that, and she's like, oh, that you shouldn't, people shouldn't have to live their lives in an unsatisfied way, in an unfulfilled way. Let's work on these things. And so we just, tackled it. And I think that what I'm trying to say is that if you end up in that kind of relationship and you are both worth it to each other, that there's something really fun and amazing about changing yourself to give the other person something that they feel like they need or want or are satisfied by, as a way of self-sacrifice, I would say. So if you have a one-way relationship in that regard, that kind of sucks, if you're the one who's doing all the changing. And so we're okay, well, I don't want to change because I'm not going to get anything in return. They're not changing for me, right? It's kind of a base instinct if you think about it, right? The reason I'm not going to do this is because you're not going to do it for me, because I'm not getting anything out of it. Well, it's true. At the base level, even relationships are little economies, right? So the real question you have to ask yourself is, do you aspire to be somebody different than somebody who economizes their relationship and will only take payment of kind in equal measure for goods? Or are you the kind of person who can do this effort for yourself, to change yourself into a better person, or a different person, not necessarily a better person, to do this even if you don't get anything back, simply because you don't mind the result that you will get for that person, and long term you're invested in it. And even if they eventually break it off and never pay you back for the effort that you put into this in reinventing yourself, do you think that it will benefit you in the future as a person, just in general, to have gone through that experience? In which case, it's a win-win-win situation for you, whether or not that person ends up paying it back. Because you get to learn how to sacrifice, you get to learn how to mold yourself, you get to learn how to speak another love language. Those are my thoughts. Take it for what you will. Thanks for tuning into the show today. Checking out my mohawk is popping up here, I guess. And make sure you check out the Mac program. Apparently, this is now not the video game League of Legends coaching show of high performance. It is straight up the relationship advice show. So tune in tomorrow for more Oprah.